when we broke away from the corporate world and started our adventure company and decided to climb mountains. So our first attempt of climbing Everest was, of course, in 2015. Everest is a mountain where 1 in every 10 people who reach the summit don't come back down.
Really?
So
Wow.
that statistic being there at the back of your mind, you can't afford to be complacent. And we reach 8,000 meters. Now, 8,000 meters is a very significant place. It's called the death zone because historically, the largest number of casualties happen in this area because the oxygen level drops to 70 to 80% less than what we are breathing right now. And you reach it, and then you're done. But not realizing that sometimes it's also important to keep the energies to continue to stay at that level of
Amazing.
perseverance, excellence, performance, whatever it may be. So,
While we do this once in a while, those are the people, those are the guys out there in the mountain who do this on a day-to-day basis, I believe.
Yes.
So, talk to us a little bit about what they're made of.
Caught up in this attempt of saying that, no, I want to prove that I can do it. That when somebody offers help, you don't realize it and say, no, I can do it on my own. And you're never alone. I think that's the most important message, especially whenever you're dealing with failure or setbacks. I think understanding that you're never alone and just reaching out and asking for help. A single attempt on Everest can cost.
We all have an Everest. Maybe it's a mountain, maybe it's not. Maybe it's a goal, maybe it's a dream, maybe it's a fight, maybe it's something that scares you enough to know that it is just worth it. Well, you have got to choose it and you've got to work for it with everything that you've got. Our guest today embodies this unshakable spirit. We have a conversation with Sam, who's a mountaineer. Well, he has faced pain and fear, but he refused to give up. He had this never give up attitude and he made 3 attempts to climb Mount Everest. In 2018, he finally made the summit and achieved his goal. Well, his story is a perfect example of resilience, rediscovery, and reinvention. He turned every setback and challenge into an opportunity and every stumble into a story of grit and courage. As you hear this conversation today, I really hope that it inspires you just the way it has inspired me. And may it gently ask you, what is your Everest? So it's really great to have you on the show, Sam. Thank you so much for joining. So let's begin with a small introduction about yourself. So if you could just give a very brief introduction to all our viewers today.
Thank you, Neha, for having me. And it's always difficult whenever I have to do this because I don't know how to introduce myself. I normally start by saying that I'm an entrepreneur, an adventure lover, a mountaineer, a trekker, a scuba diver, a TEDx speaker, and now an author as well. So
great. So you wear so many hats and you forgot you're a fellow Simsite. So right. It's really great to have you because you're my senior from Symbiosis. And we really look forward to learning from your incredible journey.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So I have a very basic question to start with. Why do we climb mountains? Like, what is it that we are seeking? Is the goal just to reach the summit? Or is it like a search for something deeper within us? What is it?
It's interesting, because I think this question was once asked to George Mallory in 1923 after he attempted to climb Everest, saying, why Everest? And his answer was very cryptic. He said, because it's there. And I think to a very large extent, very often people say, okay, why the mountains?
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. It's not because of the mountains. I think it offers multiple avenues. The fact that you get a chance to break away from the monotony of the daily routine of work, to reconnect with nature, of course, to make some distance between you and the clutter of noise and daily life. But also, I think there are some inherent challenges associated with it, which push you to your limits and sometimes beyond your limits as well. And I think to a very large extent, people end up climbing mountains because it allows them to define who they are as people, right? Not just the ego associated with life, but also the humility associated with life.
Wow.
The purpose behind setting yourself on a very definitive goal,
Mm,
overcoming your own failures, your own limitations, and literally overcoming whatever limitations you set for yourself. So I think, in a way,
amazing.
the mountains actually help individuals redefine who they are as people. Yeah.
Wow, very well said. Like mountains redefine us, and we're really pushing our limits and kind of discovering who we are,
Yeah,
right?
true.
So let's start with your journey. So in 2015, there was that your first attempt or your second attempt?
Yes, I mean, so during the process of discovering mountains, I had the opportunity of climbing Mount Everest in 2018. But this journey took us the better part of 3 years. When I say us, I'm talking about my colleague Sauraj
Yeah.
and me. Both of us were batchmates from SIMS, and we broke away from the corporate world and started our adventure company and decided to climb mountains. So our first attempt of climbing Everest was, of course, in 2015, which unfortunately met with failure.
Yeah.
2017 was also a failed attempt, and finally we attempted to climb Everest in 2018 and was successful. So it was a huge journey of, I would say, success, failure, tragedy, triumphs,
Yeah.
and it helped redefine us.
So let's talk about 2015. I believe there was a near death experience. There was an avalanche that was there at the base camp. So, how was that time? If you were to go back and relive those memories, how was that experience? Because obviously, I have never climbed mountains, but for somebody who's really, looking forward to hearing your journey and your story, so what happened during that time, and how did that change your relationship with mountaineering as a whole?
2015 uh, was a very difficult experience, pretty much because it was the very first time that we attempted to climb Mount Everest. And it's no small endeavor. I mean, it takes about 2 months on the mountain to accomplish this. It's a huge cost.
Yeah.
A single attempt on Everest can cost anywhere from 30 to 40 lakh rupees.
Wow.
And that's just the basic plan of sorts. And if you don't do it, it's not like an Amazon return policy money back guarantee. It's one attempt, and that's all you get. Um, it just so happened that when we were climbing Everest in that particular year, on the 25th of April, Nepal as a country was struck by a massive earthquake measuring 7.9
Yeah.
on the Richter scale. It was a huge earthquake. In fact, in a matter of minutes, over 10,000 people lost their lives.
My God.
70 to 80,000 people were displaced because they'd lost their homes.
Mm.
And in a very small, remote part of the Himalayas, close to Everest at the glacier, this same earthquake triggered off a huge avalanche,
Mm.
literally, tsunami disaster of sorts, which destroyed base camp, the headquarters where mountaineers set up at the glacier. Uh, 22 people lost their lives in that
Oh my
endeavor.
God. Mm.
And it just so happened that that year we were attempting to climb Everest. We lost some friends of ours in that. We almost lost our lives as well. It it definitely did shake us to a large extent, but I think that experience ended up redefining us to a large part, because rather than focusing on the success of reaching the top of the mountain, the expedition parameters changed. It wasn't about climbing the mountain anymore. It was about assisting our fellow climbers in the rescue and relief.
Yeah.
And I think that to a large extent taught us the meaning of the value of life,
Mm.
because it was important to understand that in a situation like that, it's important to value life over, as I said, your own ego.
Mm.
It taught us a lot of leadership, especially in terms of crisis management situations. And I think more than anything else, it helped redefine what it means to uh, follow your purpose
Hmm.
even when you have setbacks as well. So
Amazing, the thing that you say about following your purpose. I believe that these are the kind of stories of resilience, reinvention, and rediscovery. Having that kind of courage and not to give up, especially after failures that you have faced. These are the stories that I want to share with the world. So talking about failure, as you very rightly said, failure is important. So I also believe in that failure is as important as success, because it tells you that you cannot take success for granted, and then when you taste success, it tastes completely,
true. Yeah.
you really value it so
Yeah.
much. So let's talk about failure more. If you could share more about learning from failures that you have had in the past, and also about the mindset, you know not being rigid. I'm not saying that you need to kind of give up,
Of
but
course.
you need to be agile. You need to know when to stop, maybe for that day, and come back later and pick it up again and try again.
True.
So share a little bit about that, from your expeditions also that you.
So it's interesting because during our first attempt on Everest, nobody could climb the mountain in that particular year. But when we came back, uh, we we took some time to recuperate, and also realized to a large extent that we were so fortunate because we had so many friends of ours who lived in Nepal, who lived in the Everest Valley, who had lost their homes,
Yeah.
but they were not sitting and complaining or waiting for the government for handouts or aid. They had literally pitched a tent outside their homes, shifted their family into the tent, and had gone back into their homes and started collecting bricks and planks of wood to start the process of rebuilding their homes. And that example of resilience, I think to a large extent, left a very lasting impression personally to me. And it made me kind of realize that, hey, we've not really lost very much. I mean, we have our lives, our homes are back,
Mm.
and the mountain is still there. And so
Yeah.
we've lost a little money, but we can always figure it out and come back and climb again, as opposed to what they're
Mm.
experiencing. And so Suraj and I came back in 2017. Of course, it's not so easy to put together a sum of 70, 80 lakh rupees.
Yeah.
You contemplate robbing banks also in the process. But I think we were able to come back in 2017, and we attempted to climb Everest for the second time. And this time, fortunately, there was no earthquake or avalanche. We slowly made our way up the mountain, and on this particular date, the 14th of May, I still remember it. We got this really great news that the weather is going to be great on top of Everest, and we should attempt to go climb.
Right.
And so we started making our way up. And imagine now we're back here after literally 2 years. This is our
Yeah.
second attempt, and so we slowly make our way towards the top of Mount Everest, and we reach 8,000 meters. Now, 8,000 meters is a very significant place. It's called the death zone
Ah.
because historically, uh, the largest number of casualties happen in this area because the oxygen level drops to 70 to 80% less than what we are breathing right now.
Wow.
So this is the really critical moment. And when we reached this area, the winds, which were predicted to be about 10 to 15 kilometers, suddenly were about 110, 120 kilometers. So obviously, you don't take a chance. We set up our tents and then we waited because the prediction was that the weather's going to be good. But it didn't get better. In fact, we
Mm.
ended up waiting through the entire night
Mm.
in those extreme conditions. And by next morning, we had to take a really hard decision. Do we prioritize greed to reach the summit, which was 800 meters away from us, or do we look at the team's safety, right? And of course, it's that classic greed versus need. And I think in that particular situation, uh, obviously, it's not so easy just saying, okay, let's go back. But I think better sense prevailed, and we came back down from Everest for the second time, having failed.
Wow.
Now, I don't know whether the experience of coming down was as difficult as coming back home and hearing family and friends
Mm.
giving you that supportive comments saying that maybe it was not meant to
Oh
be.
God,
Why
that
don't
really
you think of
hurts.
doing something else? And if you belong to a country like ours, I think it's a message from God.
Oh God.
So I think that was a
Mm,
lot more difficult to deal with than anything else. And obviously, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of frustration. I was very bitter from this experience because we pretty much dedicated every resting moment either training for Everest or funding Everest or promoting our attempt to climb Everest. And so, after the second step, I really wanted to give up.
mm,
I felt it was easier to just go back to a nice, quiet, comfortable corporate life where I would not have to risk my life, right? And I remember taking these emotions, and after a couple of days, it just kept getting worse and worse. And I ended up sitting down with my mum and sharing it with her. And she's an adventure enthusiast. She's trekked with me to the Everest base camp as well,
amazing.
and she's been a tremendous inspiration for me. And I remember sharing this experience with her, and that dukh bhari kahani of frustration.
Yeah.
And she started smiling at me, and laughing a little bit. I was like, why are you laughing at me? Right? I was even more angry. And she's like, Sam, listen, I have seen you as a baby learn how to walk, and you must have fallen 500 times, 1,000 times, 2,000 times. And now look at you. Not only do you walk, but you're climbing mountains. So go back a third time and try, and we will support you.
Amazing.
And I think that became the defining moment. It was not just about Sauraj and I attempting to climb Mount Everest. I think it became this entire support system around you, this
Yeah.
team of people who not only were helping you climb the mountain, but were also wishing you all the best for it. And the moment I realized that I was not alone, I think that became the defining moment. It's really about not having to prove that no, I can do it. And I think that's what usually happens, right? We get so caught up in this attempt of
Yeah.
saying that no, I want to prove that I can do it,
Yeah.
that when somebody offers help, you don't realize it and say, no, I can do it on my own.
Yeah.
And you're never alone. I think that's the most important message, especially whenever you're dealing with failure or setbacks. I think understanding that you're never alone and just reaching out and asking for help.
Incredible. That's such a nice thing to hear. And especially having a support system, like you
Yeah,
said. So surround yourself with people who really kind of
absolutely.
uh, help you rise,
Yeah, without a
right?
doubt. Yeah,
Yeah. So in 2018, you finally climbed Mount Everest.
that's
So
right.
I want to know, like, what was going on in your mind? You must have been having so many emotions. I don't know if you were numb from the cold one. Take us through that experience. How was that like for you?
It's interesting. It was such a conflicting sense of emotions that we experienced when we finally reached the summit of Mount Everest, literally the top of the world. I always thought I would feel like this conquering hero, who's finally vanquished this monster of a mountain, the biggest mountain in the world. But to be honest with you, it was one of the most humbling experiences ever, because we made so many attempts and there was so much of effort, time, energy, patience, and perseverance that had gone into attempting to climb Everest,
Absolutely.
that when we finally reached the top, it was literally like as if the mountain was telling us, okay, you've worked hard enough, now you've earned it.
Mm.
So it was literally, as I would put it, there was a tremendous sense of validation, of course, but it was a very, very humbling experience also. More importantly, especially when you're climbing a mountain, unlike crossing the finishing line of a race where you cross the finish line and you're like, yes, I'm done, and
Yeah.
that's it. But when you reach the top of the mountain, you have to remember that it's just 50% of the journey, that you have to also have enough energy reserves, presence of mind to come all the way back down again.
Yeah.
And Everest is a mountain where 1 in every 10 people who reach the summit don't come back down.
Really?
So
Wow.
that statistic being there at the back of your mind, you can't afford to be complacent. And it's interesting because, very often we have this goal in mind that we set in life and we're like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to reach it. And you reach it. And then you're done. But not realizing that sometimes it's also important to keep the energies to continue to stay at that level of
Amazing. Yeah.
perseverance,
Yeah.
excellence, performance, whatever it may be. So yeah,
Exactly. That happens actually in the corporate job also.
of course,
Because in my experience, my goal has been okay, you get a job.
true.
But then to sustain that job
Yes,
also, you
yeah,
need a lot. You need
true,
to give
true,
a lot.
without a doubt. Yeah.
So yeah. So I wanted to like talk a little bit about the death zone that you said at 8,000 meters. Do you
Yes.
have like any stories or anything about that zone?
Uh, it's, I mean, a place that is called the death zone, obviously, you can imagine it's not a place where humans are supposed to be, right? And it's a kind of place which requires you to exceed normal parameters of performance, because the oxygen is less. Your body starts deteriorating. Your muscles
Mm.
start cannibalizing each other. You are burning calories at probably, I would say, about 8 to 10,000 calories in that period of time. So it's one of those places where disaster is inevitable. And so into that zone, invariably what happens is that there's a lot of exposure that's there, and you end up possibly losing your life. In this particular instance, fortunately, when we were climbing Everest, we didn't encounter anybody who, I mean, you hear so many stories, right, of bodies and corpses lying
Yeah,
over there
yeah.
as well. So I personally didn't encounter anything like that. But in 2017, when we had taken the decision to come back down, we found a fellow climber, a friend of ours, who was going up, and he got really excited when he saw us, and he was like, Sam, Sauraj, congratulations, did you reach the summit, how was it? And we had to tell them that no, unfortunately we didn't reach the summit, and we told him to be really careful. And he continued up the next day, and he was successful in reaching the summit. But while coming back down, unfortunately, Ravi lost his way and fell into a crevasse,
Oh God.
and he could not be recovered for a couple of days after that. And there are a lot of such stories over there. There's Shreya Shah Koflak in 2012, who attempted to climb Everest, a Nepali Canadian, and had a similar experience as well. She reached the summit of Mount Everest, but while coming back down, was so exhausted that she just wanted to sit down and rest, and then she could never wake up. So, in fact, if you ever do the trek from Nepal to the Everest base camp, the South base camp,
Yeah.
there's a pass called the Thukla Pass at about 4,700
I see.
meters. And on that pass, there are over 200 or 300 memorial stones
Oh my God.
just placed by family members, because that's the only way they can remember their family climbers who were attempting to climb Everest.
Yeah.
And it's a haunting reminder, the fact that this is dangerous, it's
Yeah.
serious, and you need to be careful.
Right. Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the cost aspect. So you mentioned it takes 30 to 40 lakhs.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And considering you made the climb 3 times. So how did you get the funds? Was there any sponsorship? How does that work?
So the cost of climbing Everest is exorbitant, and this for two reasons. One is the fact that, imagine running your household and the normal expenses that come with it,
Yeah.
electricity,
Absolutely.
food, living, the works. And now imagine you've shifted your entire accommodation on a glacier remotely in the mountains.
Yeah.
So everything takes effort and time. Food takes a couple of days, if not a week, to travel all the way from Kathmandu to reach you. Electricity is kerosene burned through a generator, for example, or solar. Even your Wi-Fi connection is through satellite phone and costs about 5 to 6,000 rupees per 1 GB of data.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of expenses that end up adding up, right?
Yeah.
And all these expenses are there to try ensuring that you reach the summit of Mount Everest. Now, how do you end up putting this money together? I think this money is also important because it kind of acts as a toll gate. So unless you really not just have the money, have the talent, but also can try figuring out how to promote yourself and sponsor yourself, it it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
How do you end up getting this money together? Well, if you don't have a rich dad or mom or an uncle or aunt, it kind of challenges you to try promoting yourself. And I think that becomes
Yeah.
part of the entire experience of climbing Everest as well. How do you make yourself into a brand where somebody is willing to invest in you?
Absolutely.
I think in mountaineering, it's a little bit different, especially when we were climbing Everest in between 15 and 18, because mountaineering was not so popular. But post COVID on Netflix, now there are a lot more documentaries that have come out promoting mountaineering as well. And slowly and steadily, it's becoming a much more popular, I can't call it a sport, but a profession.
Yeah.
And now it's become a little easier, but back then it was much tougher. So we did really crazy things like reach out to our alumni in Sims who supported us. You know, it was as little as 500 rupees to 1,000. Reached out to schools as well. I still remember my biology teacher from the ninth grade reached out to me and she said, listen, I've heard about your entire experience, and I remember you being a very perseverant kid, and so I'm sending 5,000 rupees to you. And it became not just a solo activity, but it literally became reaching out to a group of people who starts believing you and saying that yes,
Yeah.
you can do it. And it becomes like every single drop makes up the ocean. Is
Yeah.
exactly like that. It was really like that. So
Amazing. I mean, really, you've built your community, I would
You
say,
do.
in the process.
You do. I mean, you end up becoming, I think the word is jugadu,
Jugadu.
because I remember reaching out to a friend of ours who runs High Spirits, right? Kodu, and he agreed to conduct a lucky draw. So we started selling raffle tickets and ended up collecting like 2 lakhs worth of money through experience like that. It was literally like multiple projects that we did to try collecting this money together.
Amazing. I mean, really, hats off to the spirit, the perseverance, and the resilience that you have, and really incredible. I want to talk a little bit about Sherpas. While we do this once in a while, those are the people, those are the guys out there in the mountain who do this on a day-to-day basis, I
Yes.
believe.
Yes.
So, talk to us a little bit about what they're made of.
I think the Sherpas are the true heroes of the mountains. The community of Sherpas, actually, it's a little bit of a misnomer because most people think that, okay, if you're climbing a mountain, you're a Sherpa, and that's not really true. The Sherpa community is actually this very, very concentrated indigenous population of people originally from Tibet, who were nomads who used to herd their yaks.
I see.
And as they herded the yaks over the mountains from Tibet, they crossed over the mountains into the southern part of Everest and realized that there were these green pastures which could allow them to settle down. And so the Everest region, or it's called the Khumbu region, is actually the home to the indigenous population of Sherpa community that's there. This probably happened like 850 years ago. At this point in time, nobody thought of climbing mountains.
Yeah.
I mean, even in India, mountains were always regarded as deities. They were either gods or goddesses that we used to worship.
Yeah.
I think the obsession or fascination of climbing mountains was more Western culture. And so, in the beginning of the 19th century, when Europeans started coming to the Himalayas and wanting to climb it, suddenly they realized that, listen, compared to the Swiss and Italian Alps, the Himalayas were 8,000 meters, and they were really struggling, to carry their bags and equipment. And so when they started recruiting the local population, which were the Sherpa community, these guys would pick up a bag and run because they were born at this altitude, at 15,000, 16,000, 70,000 feet above sea level. That's where they had babies, and these babies grew up and they used to play in the mud and literally grow up in these areas. And so were genetically conditioned to live at higher altitude and experience those colds. And at first, the Sherpa community were only considered to be porters, but eventually they were identified for this strength. And I think the defining moment to a large extent was Sir Edmund Hillary, who befriended a very interesting man as part of the 1953 expedition. and identified him and his strengths, and that was Tenzing Norgay. And so the two
I
of them ended
see. She
up
was a
being,
Sherpa.
yes. So Tenzing Norgay was a Sherpa, and he was,
He-
one of the prominent Sherpas with the community. And Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first people to climb Everest, even though they were the backup of the backup team to attempt climbing the mountain. And ever since then, I think the Sherpa community slowly and steadily started becoming more and more prominent in the mountaineering world. And
Amazing.
today, they're I think, indefinitely recognized as the strongest, toughest mountaineers in the world.
So they go all the way to the top?
Yes, to a large extent. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. In fact, in today's day and age, every single person who attempts to climb Everest
Yeah.
never does it on their own. They invariably have one Sherpa who's leading them. So even when we climbed Everest, each one of us had a Sherpa dedicated to us, helping us climb Everest.
Wow,
Yeah.
great. I want to talk a little bit about your company, Adventure Pulse. So, if you could talk about the expeditions that you, I believe 20 to 25 in a year, right? So you conduct, and also like what preparation goes on, of course, at your end, and also for those people who want to, join. So how do they prepare? Any advice also that you have them?
So I'll be honest, when we first started off Adventure Pulse, it became a means to us climbing mountains. But after we ended up finishing climbing Everest, I think it gave us an opportunity to introspect and try identifying what do we do, what is the purpose. And slowly and steadily, that became the purpose for Adventure Pulse. It became about giving people from all walks of life an opportunity to have this incredible adventure, this incredible experience,
Yeah.
whether they trek or whether they go to the mountains, and create parameters of quality, safety, and trust, so that they feel that they don't have to worry about their lives. Now, the classic image of what a trekker or mountaineer used to be was, you have to be 25 or 26 years old, you should be
Yeah.
really, really fit, you
Yeah.
should be able to carry 25, 30 kgs of your equipment.
That's exactly what I think.
And and if there's nothing around, you should be able to go and poop in the bushes, and that was the classic image of what a trekker or mountaineer should be. And we felt that we can kind of redefine that entire definition. So, to give you a perspective, the oldest person that we've taken on the Everest base camp, which is supposedly the toughest trek in the world, is 72 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and the youngest person we've taken is 6 years old. And the idea of that is to say that the mountains are not limited to only one specific stereotype of adventure enthusiasts. There are people from different walks of life who just want to experience that adventure, right? And in a way, in doing so, end up defining their own Everest in the process. And that's what Adventure Pulse is all about. So we end up taking people to the mountains of Ladakh, of Kashmir, of Sikkim. We do family treks where parents and the children can reconnect with nature in
Okay.
Dharamshala. We take people even abroad to Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain of Africa,
Yeah.
to Elbrus, which is located in Russia, but is technically the highest mountain of Europe.
I see.
We do a lot of treks in Nepal because Nepal is close to our heart. It's like our second home. And very recently, we've even started doing expeditions all the way to South America, where we
see.
take people to Mount Aconcagua, which is the highest mountain of the entire Andes mountain range.
I see.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, talking about the base camp, you said you took someone who's 72 years
Yes.
old, right? So, if you could just talk to us about how much prep time was required, of course, for this individual, someone like me who is basically not a mountaineer at all. So, how do they prepare themselves, like physically, mentally, and I'm sure you assist them.
Yes.
So, talk to us about the duration and about the prep that goes into it.
I think the biggest challenge, or the first big step that someone has to take, is saying that, yes, I want to do this. Okay, help me to do it. How do I do it, right? And we usually buffer, especially like for example the Everest base camp trek, we buffer for at least 2 to 3 months of pre-prep time. So if somebody comes up to us and say, listen, I've never done any trekking in my life, but I would like to do this trek,
Yeah.
will you be able to help me? And it starts with just trying to build in healthy habits of consistency. It's talking about just waking up in the morning and going for a half an hour 45-minute walk,
I
and
see.
doing it today, and then doing it
Mm.
tomorrow, and then
Mm.
doing it tomorrow again, and
Mm.
slowly and steadily building those habits of consistency,
Yeah.
that discipline of consistency,
Yeah.
and then slowly and steadily increasing it. By the end of the entire experience, I think a person who ends up attempting to go for the Everest Base Camp trek can climb about 60 to 70 floors of stairs, can carry about 4 to
Wow.
5 kgs in a backpack on their back, because that's the level of preparation you need for the Everest Base Camp. But it's not like it's going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
So the idea is to try building slowly and steadily that discipline and that consistency,
Mm.
so that when they end up doing this trek, it's not easy, it's tough,
Mm.
but the feeling of accomplishment that comes after that,
Mm.
that becomes truly
Yeah,
rewarding.
nothing beats that,
That
right?
becomes truly rewarding.
Amazing, great. So, I want to know, like, you have written this book. What's your Everest? Maybe very quickly, you can talk to us a little bit about your book, and then the follow up question that I have for you is that what's your Everest now?
So a lot of people used to ask us about, our experience of climbing Mount Everest, and when we used to share it, they would be like, oh, you should write a book. And we were like, yeah, but it's not so easy writing a book. But I think one very big thing happened, which was the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And I think during the pandemic, 2 3 things happened to people. One, I think it touched everybody's lives.
Yeah.
Whoever you were, it wasn't just a statistic of somebody who died, it was somebody that you knew, it was a family member.
Yeah.
Two, it made us pause from our huge, cluttered, hectic
Yeah.
schedule, where we started reevaluating what our life was all about, right? Not just about the work, uh, financing our families, but it was more about trying to figure out, okay, who am I, what am I doing? I think the third thing that really happened was it gave us a tremendous value for our own life. I mean, this concept of YOLO, you only live once, I think it became prevalent with every single person, irrespective of who
Absolutely.
you were. During this period of time, we also had a lot of time on our hands, and rather than reminisce about the fact that we couldn't go to the mountains, it gave us a great opportunity to sit back and reflect on our experience as well, right? And we started writing this in 2020,
I see.
and it kind of took us the better part of the last 4.5 5 years. So I often joke saying that it took us more time to write the book than actually climb Mount Everest. And I think the result of that was that we ended up not just writing the book as a memoir of our experience, but also delving deeper into some of the emotional aspects that we experienced during that period of time, and be confident and vulnerable at the same time to try expressing that. And that's what the book is about. It's not about just climbing Everest, but it's also about the emotions it takes when you're chasing after your dreams, failing, the courage it takes to face those fears and come back again.
Absolutely.
And the interesting thing was that a lot of people who've ended up reading the book have actually reached out to us saying that, listen, I've not climbed Everest, but a lot of the emotions that you've expressed are very relatable. And we've got some really great feedback for it.
Great. So what's your Everest now? Is there like a mountain that you want to climb or something in your life?
I think it's twofold right now, rather than just being about a specific mountain to climb. I think it's important to have many Everests, because it gives you an opportunity to aim for something, accomplish it, and then continuously move forward. In this particular case, I think for me personally, this opportunity that Adventure Pulse provides, where I get to trek with people from different walks of life, share my experience, get to hear them sharing their experience,
Absolutely.
and helping them reach their own well, not physical Everest, but at least their own personal Everest.
Yeah.
So we've had a chance to work with some amazing people over the period of this last couple of years. A friend of ours based in Bombay, Tulsi, she was a breast cancer survivor.
Okay.
And for her, life had come to a standstill
Yeah.
physically, because everybody tells you, no, you're not supposed to do this and you're not supposed to
Exactly.
do that. And she said, I want to trek to the Everest base camp and you are going to make it happen. And so we had to sit with her and work with her on how to do that.
Amazing.
And she actually ended up reaching Everest Base Camp and used that as a platform to talk about how post breast cancer there is still life. You can still be strong and independent and still be a woman, right? And achieve whatever you have your heart set out on. Another friend of ours, Mr. Rajat Mathur, um, had a heart attack and literally had to have surgery and have a pacemaker set up.
Yeah.
And he ended up trekking to Everest Base Camp
Really?
as well. Yeah. And even though there were a lot of checks that we had to put in place, we had to have a contingency plan in case, we had to evacuate him and
Absolutely.
stuff. But he did it and he reached Everest Base Camp. And this was a person who was told that forget about running, he may not be able to walk more than a kilometer in his life because it would
Wow.
exhaust him so much. And I think being part of these experiences or being an enabler for people like this, as I said, to allow them to find their own Everest, for me has been super rewarding. And I think slowly and steadily, the fact that we've been able to write this book, people are reading it, they're giving us great feedback. I think that messaging is so important. It just takes a little bit of passion and lots of perseverance
Absolutely.
to find your Everest.
Amazing. I mean, your story is really about following your heart and
Yeah,
not
true.
giving up, right?
True.
So one last question
Please.
that I have for you is, do mountains speak? And if they do, what do they speak to you?
This is such a philosophical question. I used to think so. I used to feel like as if, the mountains call me or speak to me. But I think to a large extent, uh, going back to the mountains is also about being able to self introspect. And I don't think we allow ourselves to do that very often. We get so caught up in the daily grind of work, whether it's getting up in the morning, getting ready, rushing to office, coming back, sorting out the house, looking after the kids. You get so caught up in the daily grind that you never get a chance to look after yourself. And I think a journey into the mountains allows you to do this. It allows you to self introspect, to weigh the pros and cons of your own life and to try redefining your purpose. And historically, all the mystics, even in Hindu culture as well, the last phase of your life is literally leaving all your materialistic belongings behind
Vanaprastha.
and going into the mountains or going into the forest, as they call it, vanvas,
Yeah.
and trying to find out who you are as a person. And I think that's it. It more than the mountains calling you, it gives you an opportunity to just listen to your own voice.
Wow, amazing. I mean, it's been such an incredible 1 hour of listening to your conversation and your story. It's really inspiring for me. And I really hope that this inspires and gives hope to all our viewers and all those who feel stuck and are looking for some motivation and inspiration. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, and I really wish you all the best for Adventure Pulse, and I hope that a lot of your community keeps growing. That's my hope.
No, but thank you, Neha. I mean, I think what you are doing is so incredible. The fact that you are doing this as a passion project, that you are taking out time to give voice to stories which often get lost, in all the clutter and the noise. The fact that you're investing your time, your effort, your energy, and being able to bring these stories to light, I think that's fantastic. So I'm so glad that you are following your purpose and your passion, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Mountains, they teach us resilience. They tell us that the path might be steep, the air might be thin, the storms might be fierce. But if you believe in yourself and you keep climbing one step at a time, then you're bound to achieve and reach your destination that you desire.